And joining me now is child and adolescent psychologist Claire Rowe here in the studio and Nick Cater from the Menzies Research Center. But welcome to both of you. Thank you so much. Now, Nick, I want to start with you because you wrote a great piece in the Australian newspaper today titled, "Spare Us the Far-Right Flannel. It's nothing more than juvenile abuse." And you go on to criticize the recent demonization of anybody on the right, particularly in the wake of France's current election. Nick, this is juvenile abuse. What is this doing to our politics?
Well, it's going to black and white, isn't it? Black hats, white hats, you know, good and bad. But this whole idea that the politics goes from the left to right, as you know, comes from the French National Assembly in the 18th century, right? It's an arcane idea. Politics doesn't fit in like that, but it suits the left, if I can call them that, to keep on with this, because then they can say that anybody on the conservative side who's slightly more conservative than averagely conservative is on the hard right. And this is what they've been saying, of course, ahead of the French elections yesterday to try and scare people away from voting for Marine Le Pen's party. They've been saying this is the first hard right government in France since the war. Well, give me a break. I mean, what has the RN got in common with the Vichy collaborationists who cozied up to the Nazis and deported 96,000 Jews? It's an absurd comparison. And in my piece this morning, as you know, I say they're actually talking about something else. What it is that people like Le Pen, people like Viktor Orban in Hungary, people like Geert Wilders in Holland, they just oppose this whole international project that the left is so keen on, that all the decisions should be made at an international, global level. No, they say they should be made at a local level, particularly on things like immigration, of course, which is the big thing across Europe now. They want to decide who comes to their country and the circumstances under which they come. It's quite simple.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at some of the anti-Semitism in the left side of politics in France right now, I think it's pretty shocking. And, you know, you would certainly, if you were a French Jew right now, you'd probably be a lot more concerned about these results than if the so-called fascist far-right party got in. And I want to ask you, though, Claire, as a psychologist, Sam Crosby was here before the break. He made the point that the media kind of probably drove a lot of the left vote because they scared people. But what is the effect of that kind of mass demonization of one side of politics that gives people this kind of shorthand to just write off a whole side of politics?
Yeah, well, I think, as Nick said, there's this tendency and movement towards our elections being run now on local, national issues in the best interest of national policies on things like immigration. Or they run, I think, on global issues, but on ideologies.
Yeah.
And once you're voting because you identify with an ideology of a party, it basically gives you a free right and permission to absolutely demonise the other side. It's this kind of notion that, well, that's for the good of the collective that we have to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I do think of anyone who's right-leaning, suddenly we add that kind of word far in front of it. Very few times are you describing someone I think as right. It's always far right, hard right, extreme right. And I think, part of that is deliberate fear-mongering.
Yeah.
And then part of it, I think, have they actually just lost touch with what far extreme right is?
Yeah. Which
is a complete, as we know, violent fascist dictatorship that somehow comes full circle to meet a left socialist dictatorship. But yeah, it's somehow but left aren't. They're just described as lefties. So
well, they're just described as mainstream. I mean, how many times do you hear the Greens described as a far left party on the ABC? And I think perhaps this is why people don't trust much of the media, because the same people who tell you that Joe Biden's okay also tell you that they're far right.